You ever notice how life tends to get kind of black and white when things seem irreparable? Something you can never get back. That focus on what isn't there is actually what makes everything so black and white. Today we're going to talk about 2020 and why it's so incredibly important to do that self-healing, that shadow work that so many of us are so good at avoiding. And from the last half of my year, I'll tell you all right now that many people have avoided using their traumas as a way to better themselves and instead avoid the soul work. This blog is going to be a bit unlike all of my other ones in that I don't usually get personal. I usually stay aligned to a message that provides some sort of value. This blog's a little bit different. Click it. Hello and welcome to Clarity Couture. I am Lindsay and I am so grateful that you have taken the time to be here today. So I'm being guided to film this blog, and like a lot of my blogs that I was guided to film that are personal, there are certain things I meant to cover to help others feel comfortable in their growth, and I'm actually not just doing this for others because we won't get into that about the underlying factors of why, people do those things, but everything I'm doing moving forward is for the authenticity of my growth and the ability for me to move forward knowing that I'm fully on my path, even if that doesn't feel aligned to me, and even if I maybe don't like what that means for that time. The beautiful thing about this life is that nothing is permanent. Everything is always shifting, the ebb and flow of life. And I think that one of the main lessons that a lot of us have received this year especially is radical acceptance to the way things are, and then being able to adapt to those. And adaptability and acceptance really have to go hand in hand, because you can't really adapt to changes if you're not willing to accept that they're there. And you can accept changes, but if you can't adapt, you also can't move forward. So it's really important to, I guess, be the example. And I don't mean that in like narcissistic type of way, but just I have found that the more that I share of my own shit show, for a lack of better terms, the more others are able to accept, evaluate, and adapt to their own maybe messy reality at that time. And it's really important to remember that exactly where we are is where we're meant to be. In our egos and our conditioned beliefs of where a person is meant to be based on societal standards or whatever is going on in that time, it's pretty normalized, and it's really important to understand when we become a zombie, if you will, in the grand scheme of things, and to call yourself out when you need to. And that is not normalized. And so this is why I'm here. I don't have a problem calling myself out. I don't have a problem stating all of the things I've done. There's a power in that, mainly because when you do that, you take that ability for someone else to speak your truth before you're ready. And if you're aware of humanity at all, if you've dealt with a human at all in the past 10 years, you'll probably see a consistent pattern of the collective swaying towards utilizing information in a way that could harm others to leverage themselves. And we will leave it at that, and we're going to get started on what is the crazy recap of 2020 for me. And I literally had to write down notes because there has been so much. I didn't want to miss anything. And so these are just key points, and hopefully I can input more stuff. And before we even begin, I'm going to do this because already I'm super thirsty. Oh, and if you guys haven't already become aware, probably going to be a longer video. So if you don't have time or don't care, then just click out. But if you have underlying trauma that you've been unable to deal with, and you are seeing patterns pop up even after all of the shifts in the world, but those patterns are so ingrained that they're affecting you still, you may want to watch this, because I'm gonna give you some information at the very end that I think is really important for every millennial to know, because I feel like if you're a millennial, you probably have been misdiagnosed, and you're probably actually just dealing with what I'm going to talk about. But That's the name of the video. Yeah, I did that. Okay, so let's talk about January. January was a month there. So at that time, I was still in the adult industry very hard, putting out 5 to 10 videos a day, and had been doing that consistently since like 2017. So I was pretty well known. At that time, I still had a Twitter. I still had my Twitter under Harlow Money. All of my personal industry friends, for those of you who are new, the majority of us will see each other during the events, ABN, Exotica, all those other events that may happen during the year, and then we keep track of each other or keep contact with each other, usually through Twitter, because that is the one social site that doesn't mess with us, right? I digress. So my Twitter was still up under Harlow Money. For those of you that are in the industry and would like to follow my new Twitter, it is me. It is She Got Clarity. So anyway, I was still in the adult industry and signed up to sign at 4 booths for ABN this year. 2 or 3 of those booths had already printed out like pictures for me to sign at my allotted times to go and sign at the booths. Sitting there one day in my penthouse that I bought for myself, not bought, but got for myself as a birthday present in October last year. It was a place that I actually looked at for over a year. Every day I would just look at that penthouse and just imagine myself being on the balcony smoking a blunt. It was a really intense visualization period that I think probably took 7 or 8 months to actually come to fruition. But I was in a new penthouse. I had only been there a couple months. And I was sitting there in this new penthouse, just looking out my window, working on the computer. It was just a pretty normal day. The dog's in my lap. And suddenly I hear, now for those of you who aren't familiar, this is going to be a long video. I'm not going to apologize. For those of you who aren't familiar, I am an energy reader. I don't really like other terms because it kind of puts you into one niche where, unfortunately, I have honed in on many different skills and spiritual awareness that I've used throughout my life. Within this last year, it's gotten so much more intense. So the way I like to share the way that I can read energy is the way someone may read a book or a notebook with words on the page. I hear energy the way others can read a book, and I am able to decipher what that energy is saying based on what it is I'm feeling, many other factors. But anyway, I digress. Again, I digress. So I'm sitting there in my penthouse, and I'm at that time enjoying working, just really living my life, just living my best life, really. It's cool. And I hear, one of my guides, and I'd like to say it was probably my dad, because he's the one that likes to push the buttons to get me really fired up. Wow, what a beautiful bird cage you live in. And suddenly my whole world loomed in on me, like, birdcage, the fuck? And I look up and I have these tall ceilings that I couldn't touch if I wanted to. I actually had like a little town of spiders all the way at the top because I couldn't get up there. It was so tall. And I looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I look over at my big windows and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a birdcage, or like, in the zoo when you go and you look at the animal. And I suddenly felt very boxed in. And then this overwhelming sense of you need to get out of your lease. You have to leave. You need to buy a bus, build a tiny house, make sure you can go off grid with that tiny house. Do it now. You're out of time. That was probably the last time I really felt a wave of fear. And this was way before the quarantine really hit and the pandemic and everything. It was like the 1st of January, 2nd of January. Like I was really just enjoying being in that energy. Suddenly I had this weird, like, you have to get out of your lease. You have to get out of your lease. You're in a bird cage. You're stuck. You don't want to be stuck here. Get out of your lease now. You have to get out of your lease. And it was that idea of buying a bus and building a tiny house and having my dog Chiquita in the passenger seat and just traveling the world, where I had for so long been searching for a home and realizing that I didn't really want to find a home at that point. I just wanted to create the feeling of home anywhere I was and let that be the beauty of the world, because I felt so boxed in. So that was how my guides kind of tricked me into getting out of my lease, because within 12 hours it was literally the best spot in town. And I'm not saying that to be cocky, it really was. It was the best view. It was top floor. There were no neighbors around you. It was crazy how it was just a great place. And so I said, okay, am I really doing this? Thought about it, and it was like, yeah. It was like a gut reaction, like a punched in the gut yes, which for me is a manifesting generator. If you know anything about human design, that is a go for me. I don't have to question anymore. I don't need to call somebody and get someone else's opinion, which might actually cause me to lose my edge and know what the answer is. So I went down and I talked to the woman at the office and I said, I need to get on my lease. And how do I do this? And I know that I just signed on for 2 years. What do I do? And they said, we just see if someone wants to take over your lease, and If they do, they'll just take the lease over from you, and you don't get your deposit back. They would get that back when they move out. And I said, sure, no problem, don't care. I want to get another lease. Let's do this. So within 12 hours, I was out of my lease. Really easy. Freaky for me, but I was like, okay. And then it was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this. I don't know what my next step is, but I feel like it's good. This was good. I felt a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Like when you're playing a game and you don't know what the right. I'm seeing the cups. When you're trying to find the ball under the cup, and I picked up the right cup and found the ball. Right. That was basically what it felt like to me on an energetic level. So 14 days. Yeah, it had to have been the first. It was like 13 or 14 days after I got out of my lease. My dog Chiquita died. It was very sudden. She woke up fine that morning, and at 1 a.m. I had the choice to give her surgery or put her down. And the way I've been raised, and I truly do feel this, that when it's your time, it's your time. I don't believe in playing God. And I know a lot of people would probably argue with that, but that goes in with the whole acceptance thing, and accepting and adapting. And due to everything that was happening in the world, which we still weren't aware of it that much there in Oregon at the time, her breathing was what the problem was. And I don't laugh in a way like it's funny. I just laugh in a way like I think COVID may have taken my pup, just because she couldn't breathe until they put her in an oxygen tank. And it was probably one of the hardest times of my adult life, because that dog, rest her soul, got me through so much. And I don't think I didn't really start mourning her loss until like August. So we'll move on because I have so much to cover. But as soon as my dog died, I switched into a gear of I don't want to do adult work anymore. This doesn't make me happy. But at that time, I had to sign an ABN, which is at the end of January, a couple weeks after Chiquita had died. So I got out of my lease, packed up the majority of my house, knowing that when I came back from ABN, I was going to need to pack up the rest of the house and move out immediately. And because ABN was like the 27th and I came home like the 29th or something like that, so I had a couple days to pack up and get out. It was actually, the timing worked out perfectly. So I go to ABN and really just was not myself. I actually had a friend who was my best friend stop talking to me during that time, and at that time it was not really devastating, but for me it was like, hey, what else do I have to release, because my dog just died, and I'm leaving the adult industry. There was all this stuff that I was purging, and I was just ready to let go of anything else that was going to cause that pull to the heartstrings, because at that time I mentally couldn't handle it. So after ABN, I got home and announced to everyone that I was leaving. And then I moved in with my grandfather. It was my family house. I wanted to walk there. That house is my sacred space. It's my safe space. Well, the whole world was quarantined. I was away in my family's home. In the country, we had, I think, 2.5 acres, and I was able to sit outside every day and go for a walk every day with no mask and just be really one with the earth. And I was so grateful for that. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I love Vegas, but I could never be there during the lockdown, and I'm so grateful. Thank you. I'm so grateful that I'm here. I discovered randomly, and it wasn't like randomly, it was a spiritual nudge in the right direction. I discovered Rachel Bell, and that is who I took my coaching classes with. And it was a 3-month, very intense, hands-on program that allowed me to really hone in on how to be the best coach for my niche and how to create a business doing that. So in February, I think I had like 300 followers on my Instagram, and I just started building out, taking what I learned from Rachel's teaching and what she shared, and just built out a business from there. I started my own LLC. I think that was in April when I started doing that. I began coaching around April and May, and I think I got my first client in May. Shout out to Trish. What's up, girl? She actually is now a coach herself and doing amazing things for people and helping them. So as a new coach, I think that's all you can really ask is to really improve someone's life in a way that can help improve others, because that's what we're here to do, is that ripple effect of beauty and love. So let me see. After I really began coaching, I started to build out my program, and this is where it's really important to be aware of the trauma that has happened in your life and be radically honest with yourself about who that has caused you to be. Because a lot of times we start habitually acting, doing, and saying things, and even thinking things that are not who we are and that are not made up of who we are, but is a conglomerative of trauma reactions, stress reactions that cause us to seem as if it's our character, it's who we actually are. Unfortunately, a lot of us have trauma from our older family members simply because they didn't understand that the way they were taught to love us was instilling trauma and teaching us to maybe feel unworthy about ourselves, or whatever that trauma may be. So it's really, really important, and that's what this whole video is about, and that's why I'm sharing all this with you, because right now it's still good. We haven't gotten to the messy part yet, and I'm already 20 minutes in. So it's going to be really fun to edit, and I know it's going to be a really long video, but I also know that it needs to get out there. Even if I can help guide one person to just being radically honest and doing that spiritual shadow work now, instead of you going, oh damn, that girl really went through it, I don't want to deal with that, then that's, I've done what I need to do. And that sometimes is all you're here to do, is maybe just reach one person, because one of my favorite sayings is, you know, you could be God's prayer being answered for someone else, you know, in a way that you're helping, and not mean like you should be really cocky and you're a godson, but don't ever make smaller a gesture that you do for another, because you don't know how far that can go for them. And speaking from someone who is really understanding my own darkness in a way that's kind of shed the old version of me that I was at the beginning of this year to this new person that I am now, you would be risking losing that. So don't do that to yourself. All right. So I had a photographer that I met in Jamaica about 5.5 years ago. And when I met this particular photographer, he was kind of the outcast hedonism. And so it's kind of a party, you know, atmosphere. And this particular person is not someone that gets along with a lot of people. They kind of need to be ushered in by someone else, and they need to, I feel safe to allow any type of extrovert energy come out. Or that's what I told myself. It's really important to see people as they are and who they are, and not for who you hope them to be, because that is where the majority of us get hurt with another person. Narcissism is, I think, spoken on a lot more now, but covert narcissism, megalomania, these things that are seemingly normalized character structures are actually disorders that a lot of people are allowed to get away with, and in turn induce trauma to others who are genuinely there to help. So you have to be really radically honest with yourself, because so many who haven't done their shadow work will risk your peace of mind and your peaceful life to ensure that their dark sides stay hidden so that they don't have to address them. That was one of the biggest lessons I've taken from others this year. And that's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if you choose to ignore that reality. And again, it's not really bad. It's a perspective that could cause you to move backwards rather than move forwards, because you're focused on this type of outcome or situation. And in reality, there are usually a lot more things at play. And again, the whole theme of this entire video is radical acceptance and letting yourself be accountable for who you may have chosen to be this year, and adapt to that and move forward, you know? It's really important to do that. So I met this photographer 5.5 years ago. We lived together for a couple months in California in 2017 or 2018. I think it was 2018. And it didn't work out. We definitely had differences. There were narcissistic tendencies then, and I ignored them. I didn't really know how to point them out the way I can now. So for me, it was just, we really didn't get along. So when he contacted me about maybe going back to Vegas, I think it was June, I said, that's crazy. You know, I was thinking I was going to go back to Vegas too. I've been feeling that I'm now able to go back to Vegas after 2.5 years of not being there and being guided to go back. And in my mind, everything is just aligned, and I was, you know, flowing, and I'm accepting. But part of what I hadn't been doing was accepting in a way that allowed me to feel emotions that I didn't want to feel. Yep, this vlog is already so long. I had to stop my computer and clear all of the video videos that were on it because it was slowing the computer down. So anyways, part of what my lesson for this year was allowing myself to accept what it is I'm feeling when they're the less than savory feels, right? When you're mad and you feel guilty for being mad, and we're gonna get more into that. I was toxic positivitying myself through a lot of things and not handling them. So when I get into the second part of the year, I just want you guys to be aware that everything that happened really was so necessary for me to come out this other side, and the only way out of it was literally through. And I think it's really important for anyone who may be dealing with something of the dark night of the soul right now. Again, we have so many of them. So we shed skin. There's another one. The harder that you fight and the harder that you hold on to these things that your ego has told you need, the longer it is going to take you to move to that next level. And the longer it takes you to move to that next level, the more uncomfortable it's going to feel for you. So it's really important to understand that these hot mess moments are needed, because what's happening is the equivalent of the can being shaken up and then opened so all the fizz can come out. You need that out so that you can continue to move and things can settle in a way that will allow you to build a foundation. Alright, so this photographer and I chose to step into a partnership. We decided that we would move in together. We decided if we got a house big enough, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. We'd be fine. So we come out to Vegas in, I think it's August, and look at a mansion. Yes, this house is a mansion. Equivalent to The Sound of Music, like the way it comes down around and it's got the chandelier. It's not as big as that house was, but it is, for all intents and purposes, a mansion. And unfortunately, people will always show who they are. There's only a matter of time before that comes out. And as an empath, we have the ability to become a narcissist to the narcissist, meaning that we will mirror back to them everything that they are, so that they become so uncomfortable that they A, change, or, well, B, do the narcissist escape route and play the victim, gaslight, blame shift. So we move out here. Things are great. I'm not really focusing on my program because my business partner wants to shoot models and he's kind of awkward around people, so I was always that in between. I was the one that knew the photographers, that got the events, that knew the models, and I don't mean that to be cocky or egoic, but that was kind of part of why we were able to work together. It was really, in my mind, a great partnership if our end result of what we wanted had been aligned. But as the months started to pass, I began to see where it was only about shooting the models. It was only about the photo shoots. It was only about the social proof on Instagram and being seen as somebody on Instagram. And then I kind of got the awareness of why the mansion was needed. And it's, if you are familiar with a narcissist at all, you know that they need things to give them that supply of feeling worthy. And it is a personality disorder that really does take over all ends, every spectrum of your personality. And with a lot of awareness and accountability, a person can get out of narcissism. It isn't, no person is stuck to anything. Your mind can shift instantly, but you have to have a perspective to shift it to that will work for you. And those beliefs that you're shifting it to need to be stronger and more solidified than what you're shifting from. So anyway, I digress. My goodness. Long story short, after doing more than a couple shoots and having 20 plus models around me, I had 5 or 6 girls that were not friends. There are girls that kind of click together here because they know they can make money. Shout out to the girls that like to hustle together. I love that. But these were all girls that were known, and all of them came to me at separate times to ask me why I was working not with my business partner, but another photographer who shot girls, and they paid for the photos, never got photos, got really, aggressive in regards to like acting as if they owned the models. And this came to me out of the blue from women who were very open. In the time that we're in, girls are a little more open to discussing when they have issues. And part of that is because we're learning that there are power in numbers. So after the 6th girl came up and I started really watching the behaviors, I saw what they were talking about. This person was someone I considered a friend. I'm also a Libra sun and moon. I don't do well with injustice, and I don't do well with manipulative people playing victim to get ahead in life, ever. And And the minute that I saw this, I just cut those people out. I just cut them out, and I went to my business partner and I said, listen, I'm having girls ask me why I'm working with people like this, and it's now seeming to affect my business. I need to cut them out. My business partner said, no problem. I support you. Not really sure what happened after that. To skip a lot of drama that really, to this day, just makes me sigh really loud. I was asked to leave a house that I was on the lease. I was pushed out of every clique that I had entered into. Character assassination happened on every level, and the fun part about this is all these people are friends. And this town is relatively small, but the amount of people that were able to get together to do something like this, where it was just very maniacal in a way that I have never experienced. No, I'll take that back. I have experienced it, but not since middle school, when I was like 13. And that gang stalking was cool then. You know, it was before kids really had internet to do things. So they were like beating each other up and just gang stalking and mentally abusing and bullying. And those were the things I dealt with in school. So this was all very reminiscent of that. And it threw me back into a wheel of trauma that I genuinely did not understand was still there. Starting with my business partner discarding me because he felt he found people that were better serving to him. Now, flash now to this time, I don't think those people even talk to each other anymore. So there's that, you know, just it is what it is. It is what it is. That is definitely the affirmation I've been saying to myself. It is what it is, and I allow it to be that. So let's get back on track. We're already 10 minutes into this. I was abandoned by everyone, and it really caused me to hit rock bottom. Because for the first part of this year, all I did was grow and learn and push out value any way I could to help the collective. And so I was feeling really kicked by the entire world. You know, that poor me feeling that bubbles up right before you pour the alcohol into your drink. I began drinking again. I went back to an ex that I shouldn't have been seeing. Everything that I felt I had worked my way out of, I put myself right back into. And here's the kicker. If you have any sort of trauma that has caused you to repeat a pattern in your life, no matter how great you have moved forward in your life, no matter who you are, if you do not heal that trauma, it will literally reel its head up on you in a time when you feel like you have everything going for you. And that is when you will literally hit a wall at 50 miles per hour. And that's where you're shown where the holes were in your foundation. And I had a lot of holes, and a lot of my holes were there because of the people I chose to trust. And there was, again, an underlying toxic positivity attachment, I guess you would say, to an outcome. And if you know anything about ego loves to attach itself to outcomes because that's how the ego is able to measure itself. I just want to say really quick, I know I'm kind of all over the place because I'm channeling a little bit too. It's really important to be aware of the people that you're keeping around you because of this. When I was in Oregon, in the country, in a room, completely alone, my life was flourishing. When I let one person in who told me that they had the intent of A, B, and C, but they only had the intent of bettering themselves and then discarding anyone they needed to use to get there, my whole life fell apart because I'm a person that will give to another and expect that same in return instead of looking at who they really are right where they are in that moment. And that doesn't mean you have to be, judgmental and hateful. It just means you need to be aware. And the energy is shifting so rapidly. It's like this instantaneously. Karma is instantaneous. I met incredible groups of friends and had my heart shattered by every single one of these people that I considered a friend because they showed me their true colors when they were given an opportunity. Be seen a certain way in society or stand by the pariah who's calling everyone out on their shit. It gets really lonely when you're truthful and authentic. And those who are cool with everybody, they're usually there based on inauthenticity simply because they have to be inauthentic to make everyone like them. Because at the end of the day, no one can make everyone like them. And that's because everyone around you is a mirror. And you have to have people that dislike you so that you can see where you dislike yourself and you can grow. And I will tell you, I have been running from this truth for a while. I already struggle with the holidays. We won't even get into the things I'm dealing with my personal family stuff, but I will say I have been cut off, unable to talk to my son for 2 months. And as a parent, that weighs on you in a way that can cause a person to make a choice in an instant that could ruin their entire life. So the amount of strength that has been required to survive 2020, anyone watching this, I want you just to really take a second to appreciate yourself, because every person that's on this planet right now was planned. They literally said, that's what I want to go down. That's it. That's the time. And you're still here. And through everything that you may have been through, that's really beautiful. And I just need to remind you guys that we aren't meant to come here to make plans. We're meant to experience, to accept, to adapt, to flow. And I'm literally not even going to cover the rest of what I would see as negative, because that to me was just a learning step. And honestly, the people that were cleared out and the way they were cleared out because it was what was in my highest good and for my protection. I feel like many of you may be able to resonate on some level to this video, and I just want to let you know, if anything has been cleared out in your life, no matter how much you wanted it, you may not have needed it. It may have been the opposite of what you needed, and losing it was what was in your highest interest. And instead of looking at it as a loss, just say, I'm grateful for the time I was given, because time isn't linear anyways, and everything can come back around if it's what's meant for you. And I just want to remind you guys that you're living the hard copy of who you came here to be, but a lot of the identifying factors of who you think you are have been created for you. And so it's really, really important to, again, go back to that radical honesty with self and that authenticity and say, where are things not adding up so that I can find my happiness? Because the trajectory and your happiness, they will collide when you focus on the things that are meant for you. When I stopped fighting what my ego thought it needed, I found a new place, and it was quite a bit different than what I was living in. I have roommates now. All of them are amazing people, and I am in a house that fosters animals, doggies and kitties that need homes, that have been through abuse. And I joke that this is a healing house, but it genuinely is. And after telling you guys that my dog passed away almost a year ago now, and I'm now in a house that is just filled to the brim with animals, almost to the point where it was almost too many. I'm blissfully grateful at the irony. And I hope that you can look back on 2020 and find blissful gratitude in the irony of where you are and where you thought you needed to be, because it's really important to take in every aspect of where we've been this year. And I say this because I want to create some sort of value that's upcoming for this year that allows you to move with confidence and ease and aligned bliss and not fear of running out of something or getting a virus. I want you guys to know that even when life is falling apart, your control and the mastery of your life all depends on what you choose to focus on. And for the better part of this last 6 months, I have allowed my focus to be filled with people who did not have my best interest in mind. And I let that eat me alive. So if this long ass blog can teach you anything or leave you with anything, it is, don't make that mistake. Especially if you're somebody who feels so deeply for others. It's okay to feel deeply for others, and it's okay to give unconditional love. But you have to be radically honest with who it is that's safe to give that away. 2020 was really, when you look at like a movie and you think about all of the factors that it needs to have to make like a full, real, well-rounded movie, right? Like there were bombs, there were like a shooting scene, there was like a karate chop, somebody fell in love, there was blood, but not too much, somebody saw boobs. Like when you think about like a well-rounded movie and you think about 2020, like 2020 was a pretty lit movie, right? Like it was pretty well-rounded. There were things we didn't even expect to happen, right? So find the well-roundedness of where 2020 has placed you, and understand that it wasn't actually 2020 that did it. It was you, and the sooner that you align to you choosing to be exactly where you are right now, the sooner everything will literally come with ease and no effort, and there's no need to hustle because you're aligned and it just falls into your lap. Let yourself get back to that. I will tell you that's what I'm doing. And in regards to my coaching and where I'm at, I did step back into the adult industry because I needed some very quick cash. Your girl was pretty well known in the industry, so that was able to pick up for me, and I'm grateful that I was able to make that money and pay off what I needed to pay off and find a new home. And my goals moving forward is to focus more on the necessity of soothing oneself into a submissive acceptance to where you are. And when you do that, that soul work happens. And I think that even though I can share so much with the content, and I still am doing that, this needs to be my focus. And if you are feeling like you are someone who needs that, please reach out. A lot of us, I want to say like 90% of millennials, are probably misdiagnosed with something and are probably suffering from what I have found to be complex PTSD. And my computer is about full again, so I'm going to leave you with that. Google that, look it up. I will be doing more videos talking about it. But please understand that the majority of us, because of the world that we came into, are actually reacting from a place of survival and not a place of abundant thrival. And that will cause us to do, say, and be a person that we are not. And it's really important to be aware of that, because if you identify with these reactions as who you are, that then becomes you. So don't fall into a victim mindset, and don't identify with anything at all unless it feels good to you. All right? I love you guys. Namaste.